All right, today we're going to talk about something you've probably heard of, but maybe don't fully understand. Dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And look, we're going to get way past all the sensational Hollywood stuff to really dig into what this condition is all about. The real, complex, and often hidden reality, guided by actual research, and most importantly, the voices of survivors.
So just for a second, what's the very first thing that pops into your head when you hear that term? Be honest. For most of us, an image flashes into our minds almost instantly, right? And it's usually one that's been planted there by movies and TV.
And yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? The media loves a good dramatic story. But these portrayals, while they're super memorable, have created this public perception that is, well, it's often wildly inaccurate. It fuels so much stigma. The truth is, the reality is a whole lot quieter and much, much more hidden.
And this quote from someone in a research study, wow, it just perfectly captures that disconnect. It shows that in real life, the signs can be so subtle that friends and family just think the person is moody or high-strung. I mean, that is a world away from the over-the-top performances we see on screen.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, let's build a proper foundation. What are we actually talking about when we look at DID from a clinical perspective? Let's get to the facts. So right there in the definition is the absolute most crucial piece of the puzzle. It develops as a response to severe trauma. This is not, and I repeat, not about having multiple personalities for show. It's a really profound psychological defense mechanism. Basically, the mind creates these distinct identities, or alters, to handle experiences that are just too overwhelming for a single consciousness to endure.
And what's so powerful here is that these aren't just textbook symptoms. These are things reported directly by survivors in a study. We're talking about these huge memory gaps. They call it missing time, or feeling totally detached from your own body. This constant fluctuating sense of who you even are. See, these are the core internal experiences, not the external show that Hollywood loves to portray.
And here it is, the key takeaway. In that same study, every single participant reported a history of childhood abuse. This isn't a coincidence. Research shows again and again that DID is it's a creative, even an intelligent survival strategy. The mind literally fractures itself to protect itself. It walls off that unbearable pain so that some part of the person can just keep going, can keep functioning.
You know, because these symptoms can look like so many other things, getting the right diagnosis can be an incredibly long and painful journey. And this quote from a survivor, it just really highlights that struggle. Imagine 7 years being treated for bipolar disorder, only to find out it was DID all along. That just adds so much confusion and suffering to an already difficult situation.
All right, so we have the clinical picture down, but what does it actually feel like to live with this, to navigate the world day in and day out with these symptoms? Let's dive into the lived experience.
This example, which someone with DID shared on Reddit, just perfectly captures the daily chaos. Just imagine this for a second. You set an alarm to take your medication, super important. But then a switch happens. Another part of you, another identity, takes control. Later, you're back and you see the alarm from hours ago, but you have absolutely no idea if the task was done. Did you take the meds, or did someone just silence the alarm? You just don't know.
And think about the ripple effect of that constant uncertainty. It's profound. As that person explained, it can lead to a complete loss of independence. I mean, if you can't be sure you've eaten or taken medicine that you absolutely need or kept an important appointment, you end up having to rely on other people for the most basic parts of your life.
Of course, this loss of control doesn't just stop at home. It spills over into every part of life. So let's talk about a huge one, trying to build and hold down a job.
Wow. This question from someone with DID is it's heartbreaking, really. It gets right to the core of that fear and frustration. How are you supposed to build a future when the very ground beneath your feet, your memory, your consistency is constantly shifting?
And this isn't just an isolated experience. It's a clear pattern you see in personal stories and in the clinical research. Someone described their school transcripts as wild, going from the dean's list one semester to failing the next. Another person talked about just stopping a job, not showing up because an alter switched in and had no idea what was going on. It's this constant, exhausting battle with inconsistency. But it's not a hopeless situation. And I love this piece of advice from another person with DID because it's so practical and powerful. For them, a remote job with flexible hours was, in their words, life-saving. It creates a safe, controllable space where the bad days can be managed without all the pressure of a 9-to-5 office. It makes a stable career actually possible.
Okay, so we've seen the challenges, which are huge. Now let's talk about the path forward. Healing is a long, long journey, for sure, but it really centers on a few key things: building a sense of control, fostering communication, and developing real, practical coping skills.
And here's a really important shift in thinking. A lot of the time, the goal isn't to get rid of the alters, it's to get them to cooperate. All the alters together are called the system, and a huge part of therapy is getting that system to work together like a team, which is what helps improve day-to-day life. A really cool tool for this is something called system mapping. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a way to make that internal world visible. You create a map of all the different parts, what their roles are, how they feel about each other, and it helps the whole system start to understand itself and, work through its issues.
And I just love this metaphor they use for it, the system tree. It's such a perfect way to picture it, right? Each alter is like a different branch. They're all unique and distinct, but they all grow from the same trunk and share the same roots. They're all interconnected parts of one whole person.
So alongside all that deep internal work, there's the really practical day-to-day stuff that's just as vital. We're talking about things like writing down everything the second it happens, meds, appointments, you name it, setting tons of timers and reminders, creating structured plans for the day or week, and having a crisis plan ready to go. All of this helps manage those memory gaps and bring some stability to what can feel like a very chaotic life.
All right, so let's bring it all home. We've kind of journeyed from that big, sensational Hollywood myth to a much more grounded, much more human reality of what it actually means to live with DID. So let's just break it down one last time. The myth? It's that this is some dramatic, super rare character flaw. But the reality? It's a hidden, incredibly complex survival response to trauma. It's a daily, exhausting struggle just to find stability. And really, if you take just one thing away from all this, please let it be this. DID is not a spectacle, it is not a personality quirk, it is a deeply ingrained and, honestly, an intelligent survival response. It's a testament to the resilience of the human mind, a creative way to survive the unsurvivable. Which really leaves us with one final thought, a question for all of us. Now that we know DID is a response to trauma, not a spectacle for our entertainment, what's our role in this? How do we, as a society, create a world that offers more compassion and real support to survivors? How do we shift from curiosity to compassion?